In this episode, we will look at ecosystems, specifically an ecosystem for chance versus an ecosystem for change.
Ecosystems in nature, eco-environment, systems, it means everything is connected, everything is interconnected, everything is interdependent on each other. The bird is fully bird. The worm is making compost so that the plants can grow where the bird dropped the seed. The bees do their work. And every organism is working together in an interconnected way. But none of these organisms are dependent. They are independent. The bird knows how to be a bird and to do the job of a bird. Nobody is telling the bird. Nobody is pulling or pushing the bird. The bee is fully bee. The fly is fully fly. Everyone has got its own purpose, and nobody pulls and pushes them or rescues them or helps, handholds them. We have to learn from nature. This is the way we should actually see social ecosystems as well. Social ecosystems, and what I mean by that is your household is an ecosystem. Your workplace is an ecosystem. Your church, your social groups, everything is a social ecosystem. And we've got to apply the same principles. We've got to do the same thing. We've got to get humans to be independent and interdependent, interconnected to the end result where everyone is aligned. But if we don't do that, we are actually going to have a problem. We are going to make people dependent. If we give them handouts and if we help them and rescue them, then they're never going to get to independence. And then they're not valuable. And they're going to never get to their full potential. And when there's a dependent factor in an ecosystem, then it creates a problem. It creates a pathology.
There is much that can be said about the looting that has happened across our country. Hordes of people laying claim to tons of goods shows clearly how entitlement can stem from dependency. This event was clear evidence of the symptoms of ecosystems for chance that is rooted in all levels of our society. This pathology is abused by politicians for self-gain on a regular basis. So how can we explain this? Vivian explains this event through the lens of occupational intelligence.
This is absolutely shocking. What has happened to our country? It's anarchy. South Africa, the country of milk and honey, has gone down the drain. Humans are moving backwards. They're supposed to move as a little small child and develop and get more intelligent from destructive response to constructive. So what are they doing? Adults are moving from constructive response to destructive response. So this is a lower level of occupational intelligence. Our occupational intelligence is diminishing. There are two types of ecosystems. They evolve. The one is deliberately planned and pre-designed, and it's called an ecosystem for change. The other one is just left over for chance. It's called an ecosystem for chance, which is what we see now in South Africa. And what exactly happened? What are they leaving over to chance? They're leaving over the human condition. It is an ecosystem that is not conscious of the human mind and understanding what these hardwires could be, understanding how to move a human from A levels to B levels. After all, that's the only intelligence, this only sustainable well-being intelligence. But if you just put a person in a school just to regurgitate information, then they don't get to independence after the 12 years in school. They stay where they are and they stay stuck, and they come out of school, they wait for the job creators that are not there, because we are not developing occupational intelligence in human beings. And that is the problem. An ecosystem for chance hasn't got consciousness about how you challenge and hold people in the moment and put humans out of comfort zone and keep all the flies out of the ecosystem. And this is what we need to control in this country. We need to control the development of the human from A to B levels. It does not help just to put a person in the school system and think they are going to move. We need to understand OI. So we've got to understand, secondly, that the only solution for this problem in this country is to create ecosystems for change and understand the components of the ecosystem. Understand that you have to drive it not through people who studied management, but humans who are provocateurs of volition that can help the others, the emergence, to move to higher levels, that can keep volition and enthusiasm going, all with the same end result. Smaller little clusters of ecosystems for change, pre-designed. We know what our values are. We know who we are and who we are not. We know who we allow in the ecosystem. That you can control. You cannot control this country, but you can create small little ecosystems for change. And collectively, eventually, it will take hands and it will take co-ownership and it will create an end result for the macro ecosystem, which is the country of South Africa.
When we look around us, the effects of income inequality are clear in our country. It's easy to classify the beautiful Blouberg region as an ecosystem for change, and the hardship in Langa as an ecosystem for chance. But it's not that simple. Always keep in mind that an ecosystem for change will nurture people to become the most responsive, most adaptive, and most contributive individual that they can be. One such ecosystem for change is Makassar Potteries, an organization with OI development at its core. Here we meet up with an ex-gangster called Jerome, who served a 19-year sentence in a correctional facility. He tells Vivian about his experiences in a totally different ecosystem as a free man.
What type of activities and crimes and things that you do as a gangster?
You see, ma'am, what I did is that firstly, I worked for a guy at his gun house. He used to sell guns out of that house, so I worked by that house actually. You see, it's also part of gangsterism. They call it the firm, you see, ma'am. And so it was part of gangsterism, and so I didn't actually rob people, you see, ma'am. I didn't do that, but I was with people who do those to other people, you understand, ma'am? Even though I wasn't the one who was doing that. But that created a system within me that for me it is right to do that. That is the only way how I can get money in my hands, you see, ma'am, to do things like that, you understand?
So that became your new culture, your new ecosystem, your new environment, and that was your end result that you wanted to achieve.
Yes, ma'am.
As a group, because you want to be part of the group.
Yes. And since the time I've been outside now, ma'am, I'm still trying to adapt to this new world. Because for me, being inside there is like a planet on its own, it's a world on its own. So you have to cope by yourself, you have to look after yourself. There's nobody that's going to look after you. So which means I have to stay my own man. So yeah, I'm outside. I'm still trying to really adapt to this kind of world outside. It's difficult, it's not easy.
So what do you struggle with the most in this outside the prison world?
Ma'am, to be honest with you, inside I got a lot of authority and respect from other people, not outside. I have to accept to say, listen here, you're not in prison, you are outside, so which means you are going to get different kinds of people. Because you know, prison, they create some kind of culture within inside of me that I have to tell myself, this is me, you understand? But when I'm outside, that culture doesn't work outside. So I have to let that culture go. Life inside prison is very slow as the life outside. Because, you know, ma'am, it's very fast out here, and for me to go with this fast life, I'm going to be in trouble, honestly. So what I have to do now, I just have to take my time, I just have to be patient, and that is what pottery taught me, to be patient. You understand? I'm so glad I'm here, so which means there's a lot of things I learned in here.
So I want to ask you about Makassar Pottery, and we call it the ecosystem for change. So it's not the ecosystem for chance where everything is just left over to chance. It's a place that thinks about the human and develops the human from dependency to dignity. And it looks at you as a human with potential that needs to become an eagle that can fly by yourself and that can catch your own food. That's what an ecosystem for change is all about. And you landed now in an ecosystem for change. Do you experience that people are putting you into challenges? You've got to operate and you've got to get into production on the right levels and stuff. But do you feel that there's something that is helping you to move to another level of being and of existence?
I don't see Makassar pottery as only where work is forced upon you. No, I don't see Makassar pottery like that. Now I see it as a place where people can learn how to become a good person, a better person, how can even teach young leaders outside. And that is what actually makes me strong.
So every person that comes through prison should actually go into an ecosystem for change, an A2B center, that they can learn to understand how the man empowers himself to drive the task. You're not just coming here as a slave of a task and the task and the task and the task. You know, it is balancing people, you, and the profit of the business so that it can cover costs, so that it can also give you some income to spin you off into big life. It's an incubator.
Yes.
It's an incubator, like it's taking the eagle in the nest and then stretching that eagle until it can fly out there. So that's actually critical for prison environments, ecosystems, to have this type of place before you launch yourself back into the world.
Yes, ma'am. If I could have told the world about A2B, I have to tell them about A2B, how I experience it.
Throughout the interview, it becomes clear that truth is at the center of an ecosystem for change, while deception rots the core of an ecosystem for chance.
In prison, you see, you became a person that you never thought that you wanted to be. If you're not going to be a pretender, you are not going to survive in there. So which means is that you have to become that person, and that is all the systems that we learn in there to be that person, even though, so which means it's like...
It's a false person.
It's like a false person, you understand?
Yeah. So can you see that that is actually teaching you how to lie? Subtly to lie or to hide the truth. So it's all versions of lying, if you think about that. So you don't learn to deal with truth because you can't dare to talk truth.
Not in there.
From beautiful Cape Town, we travel north to Pietermaritzburg in KZN to visit Belgotex, a company that has achieved international success as it is at the forefront of driving OI development in the workplace. Here we meet Edward Cole, the Chief Executive Officer.
So why does human optimization matter to us at Belgotex? I think as we've applied our minds and better understood the topic and become pretty fascinated by it, we believe that ultimately we are a product of our own ecosystem. What does that mean is that our results, our performance is determined by the state of that ecosystem. So the healthier the ecosystem, the more easily we are able to flourish, expand, grow, learn, whatever it may be. If the state of that ecosystem is unhealthy, no matter what human or managerial, innovation we try to put into the ecosystem, ultimately it just fails and is constrained. So we've become really fascinated by the power of the ecosystem, the health of the ecosystem, and the humans within that ecosystem. I like to often draw parallels or comparisons, not in kind of quite a personal context of, I think we can make sense of this when we consider the state of our home. If things aren't healthy between husband and wife, it's going to be more challenging for the child in that environment to grow, to be happy. Let's call it something as simple as that. And so I think it's easy to understand the power of ecosystem in that context, and how delicate that ecosystem arguably is as well. I think we need to protect it, we need to manage it, we need to invest into it quite deliberately. It is organic though, it's got many moving parts. There's humans in it. That in itself is organic. But if we're not deliberate about it, it's going to go in a direction, arguably, that's probably the path of least resistance. And when we look around at society, I think it's safe to say that that ecosystem generally goes to a dark place, or generally goes to an unhealthy place because of the sinister forces at play, or the dark forces at play. We should take more accountability for the ecosystem for ourselves. It's incredibly liberating when we do this. It's incredibly powerful when we do this. The more optimal humans you have in an ecosystem, the more powerful that ecosystem is going to be. it's kind of this exponential multiplier effect. We see immense value for the business in it, not just in terms of bottom line results, but in general well-being of everyone in the ecosystem. I believe that this is kind of the secret sauce of business going forward, to be honest. Most businesses talk about, people being their greatest assets, and I think we all agree on that. But unless you're really investing in that ecosystem, or unless you're really aware of what's happening and conscious of what's happening around us, I think that the risk is just to make a cliche statement like our people are our greatest assets, when we actually need to work on it. We need to invest in it.
It is clear that investment in human capital is an important concept that starts with leadership. What does this leadership look like?
So what are the characteristics of the leaders of an ecosystem for change? The managers, the top management, the junior managers, what should they look like? How should they behave? They should be change agents, and a change agent is a provocateur of human volition. So let's look at that. A provocateur that provokes the willpower, the intrinsic motivation for action of the humans that work in that ecosystem. So they've got to have high enthusiasm and inspiration. They should be driving the end result, communicate this end result of this organization, this organism, all the time, talk about the end result, how every human fits as a cog in the wheel into this mechanism that drives the end result. So they've got to keep the wheels oiled all the time. What does that mean? That means that they've got to get them into the highest state of willpower and self-driven motivation for action. They've got to keep anxiety down, volition up. They've got to keep the contaminators, the flies in the ointment, the power zappers. They've got to keep them out. So they've got to be very assertive and very strong about that. And they can't just be pleasing people around them and rescue people. They've got to move the humans to the end result with a strong force of assertiveness, enthusiasm, vision, initiative, creative ability. When there's a moment of anxiety, they must be able to turn that around into a moment of enthusiasm. So they've got to have the ability to turn every threat into an opportunity and to see it as an opportunity for change and for learning. And they can't leave people behind. They can't allow certain people to behave in a certain way, but they've got to get them all together, moving forward in a state of highest volition, provoking the whole time volition. Then the last thing, they've got to know how to work with truth and to deal with the hard wire when you see the hard wire playing out, and to help that person to rewire and come up with a solution, but not tolerate it. Zero tolerance for working with lies and a lack of truth, because that creates trust issues. So that is the most important, is to have unadulterated truth and deal with it without shying away, not being scared of handling the truth. So let's talk about the components of truth in an ecosystem. This is very critical to understand truth, honesty, transparency, and trust. So I'm going to give you a little challenge. Let's imagine a mother had 4 children, and these quadruplets are now being born. So which one has to be born first and second, third, and fourth, so that all these characteristics are working in an ecosystem? I'm going to ask you to pause this video and go think about these words, what they mean, and what must happen first for the next to happen, so that in an ecosystem, these components can prevail and can be strong and can be components that manages an ecosystem for change. So let's see who of you got it right. What needs to happen first is truth. You've got to have a culture where you can have language that talks truth, where you can admit where you are at in doing a task. And that's why the OI scale is a truth tool. It can tell you that I am A1 in this task, and you can admit it without shying away and pretending that you can do the task. It is the hardwires would be another truth tool where you can admit what blocks me and what creates this behavioral pattern and this default reasoning style in me. And I can work with the truth of who I am in the inside. You've got to have a lot of truth tools to be able to face the truth. Does not matter what the cost. And when you can face the truth in the way you communicate to each other, not hide it and be wolf in sheep's clothing, pretending that it's different and it's a false sense of self. If you can have truth that is raw truth and you can all work with the truth, then it's also easy to be transparent. Then you can put all the cards on the table. You can put the cards on the table of whether the organization has money or not. And everyone can know that and not think you are just nasty to them that you're not giving them an increase or whatever. Then you can work with honesty. So then when people can be transparent, they can be honest about everything. And the honesty culture can prevail in an organization. And then the most important for ecosystems for change is to work with trust. So if those first components are not working and operating freely, there cannot be a culture of trust. You cannot trust each other. And that is going to cause people to gossip, to feel they're victims, they are not being treated well, and this one gets treated better. So now you can work with the truth, the transparency, honesty, and everyone can trust that what is happening in this ecosystem is integrity. It is real. It is not lies. I can trust it. And when you trust something, then you feel safe. And when you feel safe, then your self-esteem grows because you feel okay about yourself. And you feel a valuable, important part of the cogs in the wheel that creates the end result. And now everything works.
We've got a long road ahead to change our current ecosystems in this country. You and I must be the spark that converts ecosystems of chance into change. And together, we can.